Crucify yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that and what Jesus Christ went through were probably
Exact
similar.
same thing.
Yeah.
Exact same thing.
Yeah, honestly. Steak's just the same, too.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm glad you understand this.
No, I get it.
This is
Yeah.
this is a daily life of
Jesus. Cooper, sorry. I get you too mixed up sometimes.
Thank you. I know. I often have to correct you.
Yeah.
I'm just Cooper. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
I'm just here living my life, man.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you clarified that, because otherwise I would have been so confused.
Fucking struggle busting over here. Well, cheers, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers. To the fucking conclusion of Cortés.
Hernán!
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Drinking Our Way Through History, where we cover the legendary people, places, spectacles, and events that history has to offer while enjoying a thick pour of whiskey.
Beer.
I am Cooper.
And I am Ian. In
today's episode, we conclude the Cortés saga and witness the end of the Aztec Empire.
The end!
In last week's episode, Cortés had entered the magnificent of Tenochtitlan and taken Montezuma hostage to control the empire. As tensions mounted, news of Velázquez's plan to arrest Cortés led to the arrival of Narvaez, whom Cortés actually beat the shit out of really quickly.
Yeah,
he lost an
super
eye.
fast.
Yeah,
Fucked him up.
Cortés gained a bunch of men and supplies. Now, meanwhile, in Cortés's absence, Alvarado. Fucking Alvarado.
God damn, this guy.
He sparked chaos by massacring thousands of Aztec nobles during the festival of Tlaxcatl. Cortés returned to his city in revolt, and in a desperate attempt to escape, he and his men, along with thousands of Tlaxcalan allies, made their way across the causeways, suffering devastating losses during what is now known as La Noche Triste.
You know what else was a devastating loss?
What was that?
Well, it was that time that these guys didn't hit that 5-star review button.
Mm-hmm.
It was rough.
Devastating.
It was a bad
Devastating.
time. Yeah, honestly, I'm still recovering.
So sad.
I'm still recovering. Every time you don't press it, I need a week at least to recover.
Just a week.
That's why we spread out the episodes by weeks.
Now, it's important to note that after the remaining men had found some safety on the shores of Lake Texcoco, Cortés immediately sought out Martín López. He was the master shipbuilder. Now, he wanted to make sure he was okay because he was already scheming to come back and take over Tenochtitlan.
Yeah.
He's like, we need Martín.
We need Martín.
Martín is the man.
Martín.
So, Cuitlahuac, who's Montezuma's brother and now the new emperor of the Aztecs, eventually ordered his forces to pursue the retreating Spaniards. Because, keep in mind, that we talked about in the last episode, they defeated them in, as Spaniards were trying to escape. As they were trying to escape, they attacked a shitload of them. And instead of just, immediately pouncing on them and finishing the job, they went back and partied. They were like, oh, we're celebrating because we won tonight. We won. And it's like, no, finish the job.
It's like,
finish
just
the
take
job.
out the rest of the damn Spaniards.
Mm-hmm. So they eventually ordered forces to pursue the retreating Spaniards. So for about a week, Cortés and his men were in full retreat, surviving in the mountains while fending off small Aztec skirmishes. Many of their Tlaxcalan allies had already returned to their homes back in Tlaxcala. They were just like, that shit was scary.
Yeah.
We want to go back and regroup. And however, Cuitlahuac's army, numbering between 10 and 20,000 warriors, finally caught up with the exhausted Spaniards.
Oh, man. Dun, dun, dun.
It's just, the time and time again that Cortés should have been killed.
Yeah.
Just should have been absolutely defeated.
100%.
And did not happen.
And it just didn't happen.
No.
Damn tradition. So Cortés may have only had about 500 to 1,000 men at this point. And
facing 10 to 20,000.
Yeah, the odds were not ever in his favor when it came to manpower. But luckily for the Spanish, they still had some cavalry remaining and were able to dispose of this rather large Aztec force using the same tactics that they had used in their earlier conquest days. Although this time, Cortés lost about 75 men and got a bit beat up himself. His skull was fractured in 2 places, 2 of his fingers had been crushed, and 1 knee was swollen, violet, and bulbous.
Yeah, it was... They finally got, they received a fair bit of damage.
Yeah.
In a bout of battle. Now, like this battle is fucking massive. Okay. It's just they all kind of go through the same techniques.
Right.
These Aztecs attack, and then the cavalry comes in and just like wipes them out row by row and just fucking decimates the forces. And the forces are just like, oh fuck, we gotta go, and then they leave.
Yeah.
Every single time, and it's always like right on the brink of when the Spaniards are like, we can't hold up anymore. We're gonna die, and then the Aztecs are like, we gotta go right now, and the Spaniards are like. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. When the Spanish forces finally made it back to Tlaxcala, Cortés became overwhelmed by his injuries and pure exhaustion and then fell into a week-long coma. Yeah. So for that week, his body battled fever and infection. He finally recovered enough, and the Spanish spent some time resting up. During this time, the Tlaxcalans were negotiating with the Aztecs, thinking about making amends.
Yeah, which is crazy. Think of how bad shit had to have been going on.
Yeah.
Because these two did not
Get along. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And they're like, you know what? Okay, maybe we're tired. Maybe we're all tired of the Spanish. We've all lost a lot of people. These guys just seem to bring bad news across the whole land, huh?
Well, that and like the Tlaxcalans were the only ones who really fought against the Aztec prior to the Spanish arrival. Not the only ones, but the only ones who were like successful with it, you know? And so it's interesting that now they're like, well, we're not gonna do that. Cortés is kind of an asshole. I mean,
it's just, maybe we think about it. But Cortés fucking wakes up.
Yeah, Cortés woke up. He was able to prevent this as he needed them for another attempt to take Tenochtitlan. When words of his plan started making its way around camp, the Spanish troops thought that he might have lost his mind. But once again, Cortés had his way with words during his speech and convinced his troop to commit to his plans, speaking about their honor, their legacy, and how much fucking gold they left behind.
Tons of gold was left behind because they didn't carry all of it back across the causeway.
Lots of it was in the water.
All the causeway. I mean, they had a good amount of it in the causeway, and then they lost all of it on the causeway, and then they left a good chunk of a pile left back in the that where they were hanging up. Also, one thing about the Aztecs and Tlaxcalans, so they would do what was called as the flower games. And they would compete. They would play war games against each other. And then whoever won these war games would then get the opposing sides, like, losing combatants.
Oh.
And then they would be able to use them for sacrifice.
Oh.
And they did this for years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would not want to compete in those war games.
And so it was like in the war games, they were not going for kills, but they were going for a strategic like victory. And then once that victor happened, the other side, they were gone to sacrifice.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was like...
I take that back. I don't know if it was the warriors that were being sacrificed or if the like Aztecs were like, okay, here's like 200 people
slaves,
we're about to sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever that is.
Sacrifice, same thing for the Tlaxcalans.
Right.
So I don't know if it was that or the warriors. I can't remember off the top of my head. So by August 1st, 1520, 1 month after his devastating defeat in Tenochtitlan, Cortés was back on his bullshit and pushing on the offensive.
Yes.
Okay. Veracruz sent in some reinforcements and supplies, and the sick and injured had healed up by this point. This time, Cortés would change up his tactics a little bit. He would gain control of lands and supply routes into Tenochtitlan, starting with the lands between Tlaxcala and Veracruz. So this was this is one of the Spaniards' many tactics that they would do through colonizing in many regions around the world, is eventually like they would find the focal point and then they would start cutting off resources to that point and starve them out.
Yeah.
So with 450 Spaniards and about 2,000 Tlaxcalan warriors, Cortés marched southeast to Tepeaca and made them bend to his will. Tepeaca was a very strong Aztec stronghold.
Yeah.
He first told them to surrender and offered peace, but when they did not, he defeated them in battle. He then took a portion of the survivors as slaves and executed any who continued to protest.
Plus, like, he offered them surrender in peace, you know what I mean? And when the fuck has that ever worked out for anybody that Cortés has promised that to?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I mean, the Tlaxcalans,
but like,
but he had to win to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, he had to face them in battle.
I guess the Totonacs, the first people he ran into.
True.
He was just, well, they didn't even surrender. They're like, come on in, man. He's got a fat belly and all that shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Big boy.
So the Spanish continued to ravage the region. In one village, he executed 1,000 men while 2,000 women and children watched. He then had the women and children branded and enslaved.
Oof.
He's on his bullshit.
Yeah.
Like heavy right now.
He's like, you hit my head, I fuck you up.
I will fuck all you up. And after the Tepeaca region was pacified, Cortés found a new settlement right there in the Tepeaca region, establishing a permanent base in the region. So a few quick things about what this accomplished for Cortés is that the victory helped the overall morale and riddled the discontent within the army, because the army was just like, why are we still here?
Right.
I walked over hundreds of bodies to get here.
Yeah.
And we're going to go back?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Why? This is insane.
Can we just go home?
I am so tired.
I haven't seen my wife in 3 years.
I can't even see my normal face bitten by so many mosquitoes.
I haven't taken off my armor for 6 months.
Now, it also secured a crucial location for supply and communication lines. It hurt the Aztecs, as Tepeaca was a stronghold for the Aztec reinforcements. It set an example also to other Aztec loyalists of what to expect if they denied Cortés. It's just like, this is our
Setting
precedent.
an example, yeah.
Exactly. Like, we execute, think of that, execution of 1,000 men. It's not beat them in battle. They executed 1,000 men.
A lot of people to kill.
Yeah.
Probably
and then
took a few hours.
branding the men and women. Or,
Or
I'm
the
sorry,
women
the
and
women and
children.
children. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. And then enslaving all of them. That's just, that's
Yep.
some shit.
All in a day's work for Cortés.
Also, keep in mind, the Spanish crown did not incentivize, they were not enslaving, like, indigenous colonies, that was looked down upon. Like,
Right.
The crown did not want that to happen. But if you worded it in a way that says these people were
They're
not
being converted.
they were not accepting the way of God, and they were still living by this barbaric lifestyle, then you can enslave them. Sure, that's fine.
Right, they're heathens.
Yeah, exactly.
Heathens. So Cortés would continue this tactic as he continued this renewed campaign. It was at this time that he asked Martín López, the master shipbuilder, to begin the very long and seemingly impossible task to search for timber to bring back to Tlaxcala in order to start making ships in order to control the lake that surrounded Tenochtitlan.
This is insane. You're in landlocked Mexico.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Build me boats.
I want you to build some big-ass ships. I want you to build 13 of them, actually. And he's like,
Just a lot of ships.
it's like, yeah, okay, all right, yeah. Where are we floating them? On the lake. Okay, we have to build them in a marina. Nope, not even gonna do that there. You're gonna build them 50 miles away from that lake.
We're going to bring the ships over the land.
It's like, Martín López had to have just been like, what the fuck did I get myself into?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure like 10 minutes later, he's like, if I pull this off,
I am the best.
Yeah, I am
shipbuilder.
like, people are going to remember this.
Yeah.
Now, you might be wondering, why the fuck are the Aztecs just letting Cortés and his men wander throughout the empire and ravage the countryside? Well, Ian, do you remember what happened in the lost colony of Roanoke?
There's a lot of things that happened with the last colony.
There's a
Roanoke.
lot of things. But one of the
There's a
things
lot of them.
was disease.
Ah.
Yep. So what the Spanish had done in the countryside had rocked the Aztecs to their very core. Also, with everything else the Spanish had done, Cuitlahuac had a never-ending list of political issues to deal with. So he needed to like figure out shit with like feeding his people, making shit the city was still running. Like, how are you taking care of all of your allies around the lake as well,
while still dealing with all of this disease and
That's the big one.
Yeah.
Fucking disease came in hardcore.
yeah.
Smallpox devastated the native people with a 50% mortality rate. Smallpox reached Mexico in October 1520 through the expedition led by none other than Narvaez.
Ah, what a
by
guy.
Governor Diego Velázquez when they came in to arrest Hernán Cortés. Now, although Narvaez's attempt to stop Cortés failed, one of the men in his force, an enslaved African, or possibly a soldier named Francisco de Aguera carried the smallpox virus.
Ah, good.
And so when Cortés absorbed Narvaez's men into his own ranks, the virus just spread so much faster because they marched all the way into Tenochtitlan, and then it gave all the people the fucking disease, and then they marched back, and then this is just spreading everywhere.
Yeah. Now, were the Spaniards also suffering from
No,
it? They were
God,
immune,
no.
right?
They were immune.
Yeah.
They were just watching people die.
Yeah, they were like, wow, we are powerful.
And well, this was another thing where the Aztecs and like all the natives were looking at the Spaniards like, maybe they are gods. Like, everybody around us is getting sick and dying except for the Spaniards. So this is another like notch into the belt of like, maybe they are a fucking god, you know?
The possibilities are there. Now, this had a bit of a ripple effect on the native people of all of Mexico. First, there was the fighting, which meant less people to plant and tend to the crops. Next came the smallpox, which also led to less people able to plant and tend to the crops, which overall turned into a very real and serious food shortage problem, and populations would die off due to starvation and also, of course, the disease.
Oh, God, that's just...
Yeah.
You hear about that like in like ancient China, like with a lot... Well, not even ancient China, like... in the last like 100 years, 200 years with dictatorships and oppressive rule. It happens to a lot of civilizations of something happens and goes in and famine, and then all of a sudden there's like no one to work the fields, and so the next generation of people just die off in mass waves of people just go
It's a
away.
ripple effect, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A quote from a native says, "Many died from this plague, and many others died of hunger. They could not get up and search for food, and everyone else was too sick to care for them. So they starved to death in their beds. By the time the danger was recognized, the plague was well established, and nothing could halt it."
So smallpox made its way to Tenochtitlan and would take the life of the new emperor Cuitlahuac in December of 1520. Several other nobles and rulers would fall victim to smallpox, further rattling the political and societal structure throughout all of the Aztec Empire, significantly weakening the resistance to the Spanish forces. Cortés, being no fool, would take advantage of this plague. The native Spanish allies were not spared with the deaths that came from the smallpox. They died by the thousands.
Yeah.
They were falling off. Cortés would replace leaders with young ones, often young relatives of the deceased chief or a direct relative to Montezuma because he had a lot, so that he could groom all of these people into becoming yes men for himself.
Yeah, it's just figureheads, basically.
Yeah, he's not dumb.
No.
he knows what he's doing.
I think he's proven that a few times, that
Yeah.
he may be a little bit insane, but he's not dumb.
Yes, absolutely.
In the late fall of 1520, the Spanish continued their escapades to pacify the region, and the 13 brigantines?
Yeah, brigantines.
Brigantines.
Brigantines. I just missed an N there.
First he puts a word in there that I'm not familiar with, and then he misspells it. In late fall of 1520, the Spanish continued their escapades to pacify the region, and the 13 brigantines that Martín López was working on were reaching their completion in Tlaxcala, where they would then be dismantled and transported through the mountains towards Tenochtitlan.
Which is crazy.
Yep.
That is so much work.
Yeah, a little superfluous if I do say so myself.
That is a massive project.
Yeah. After Cuitlahuac, right?
Yep.
Cuitlahuac died on December 5th of 1520. Montezuma's nephew, Cuauhtémoc. Oh, there's the pronunciation.
Yep.
His nephew, Cuauhtémoc, would succeed him, becoming the 8th and final emperor of the Aztecs, and would immediately set out to shore up support around the empire to try and rid the lands of the Spanish once and for all.
Yeah. They would try.
Yeah.
Gave it a valiant effort.
Give it a good old go at it.
On December 26, nearly 6 months after getting his ass kicked in Tenochtitlan, Cortés set out from Tlaxcala to the Valley of Mexico to begin his siege and takeover of Tenochtitlan. He had about 700 Spaniards and over 10,000 Tlaxcalan warriors, and they arrived in the great city of Texcoco, the second most powerful city in the Triple Alliance, on December 31st, finding that the most people had already fled. Anyone who remained, he branded and enslaved. Just fucking put it right there.
You're still here? Okay.
Come on. He immediately set up a new yes man king of Texcoco who'd do anything he asked. He was a real young guy.
Yeah.
From this vantage point, Cortés would systematically begin taking control of all cities surrounding Lake Texcoco, further isolating Tenochtitlan for the next 2 months. In mid-February of 1521, the 13 disassembled brigantine ships arrived in Texcoco, ready to be assembled and begin taking control of the lakes surrounding Tenochtitlan. Bringing in the ships were 10,000 Tlaxcalan porters and an additional 10,000 Tlaxcalan warriors. These guys just had numbers.
Yeah.
Man. I mean, the odds were ever growing in the Spaniards' favors at this point.
100%.
So one more time, just to take this shipbuilding perspective. They had to build ships 50 miles away. They tested them on a lake that was close to Tlaxcala.
They're like, yeah, they work.
They put them there, and then they disassembled them. And then it takes 10,000 porters to carry the chains, the ropes, the nails, the timber, the sails, all that shit through 50 miles of mountainous terrain.
That must have been quite the procession.
Oh my God, right? Then Cortés didn't want to invite an attack on the water from the Aztec war canoes while reconstruction of the ship, so he didn't build a marine. So he had them rebuilt them on 1 mile inland from the lake.
Good.
1 fucking mile from the shore. And so, and once they were put together, he then had a ditch dug, a 1 mile trench dug from the ships into the lake that took 2 months to dig around the clock all the way so the ships could reach the lake.
Hey, man, at least the men were in shape, you know what I mean?
Oh my God. It's absolutely insane to think it's still, like I was saying last week, it's the most respected naval attack from a landlocked
sounds like there was a
situation.
lot of prep work that went into it. That's for sure.
And the fact that he just did this.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that he set out on the conquest to be prepped and ready to do. He just was like, let's build some fucking ships in the middle of Mexico.
Where we will build boats. Lots of boats. The biggest boats.
The biggest boats. You're going to have the best
You've
boats. These are going to be the best and the strongest
boats.
No one knows boats better than I am.
Everyone knows they're the best boats. Ask anyone. Who was that impression of, Cooper? Anyway.
Someone who eats dogs.
Oh, man. By April of 1521, the work was done and the ships were ready to launch. Cortés had also been able to acquire 100,000 to 200,000 native troops by securing the land surrounding the lakes. He had around just 1,000 Spanish foot soldiers and 100 cavalry. The Spanish supplies, weaponry, and artillery had continued to stockpile as well, essentially guaranteeing the fall of Tenochtitlan.
Yeah, he's got 100,000 to 200,000 native troops. He's got 100 horses. He's got 100 horses. We've seen what he's done with 10.
Yeah, that's true. Now he's got a hundo.
He's
keeping it a buck, man.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love it.
Oh, and the funny thing about these ships, no one wanted to fucking be on them. No one. None of the Spaniards. He was like, gonna take a volunteer count. He's like, yeah, everybody's going to want to be on this naval battle. Not one person. He was so pissed because they all wanted to be on land. They thought that if you were on the ship, you wouldn't be able to get to the gold first.
That's, yeah, when you put it that way. When you put it that way, it makes sense. So on April 28th of 1521, the 45 to 50-foot ships were launched into Lake Texcoco.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Texcoco.
It's x to me, but it's sh. Texcoco.
These words are hard. I get it.
Yeah, it's tough out here, okay? By mid-May, Cortés had his army ready. He broke them into 4 divisions. He would personally lead the naval divisions, and then 3 land divisions being led by his most capable captains, Pedro de Alvarado.
Yeah, that fucking asshole.
This fucking guy. Yeah, most capable captain, huh?
He did help them construct the bridges to get out of
fair.
Tenochtitlan.
That's fair. So he's got Alvarado. He's got this guy Cristobal de Olid and Gonzalo de Sandoval. Each would have 150 foot soldiers, some cavalry, and some harquebusiers.
Guns.
First try, baby. There would also be a contingent of native soldiers, each about 10 to 20,000 strong. What's crazy about this is at any point the natives could have just
turned on him.
Yeah,
but they were all fucking tired of Aztecs.
That's fair. That's fair. He definitely took advantage of that.
Yeah.
On May 22nd, each of the Spanish captains took their regiment around the lake and captured the 3 main cities that had causeways leading to Tenochtitlan and effectively cut the Aztecs off from the outside world, and also cutting off their fresh water supply.
Yeah.
The naval force then systematically cut off supply routes to the lake. From there, Cortés would have his navy protect the men on the causeways and slowly gain ground to Tenochtitlan, just whittling away.
Just whittling. This is a long time of whittling away.
Yeah.
The Aztecs...
He was a patient man.
he was patient and effective. He learned his lessons.
Yeah.
I will say this is a man that has failed and come back with a new plan of success.
Yeah.
Over and over again in this entire thing. The Aztecs sent thousands of war canoes out to try and thwart the advancing Spanish navy, but the brigantines proved to be devastating. All the spears and arrows were essentially useless, and the ships were large enough to simply plow through the canoes, destroying any and all that got in their way. I mean, it was just shattering them.
Yeah.
Especially when the wind was at the ship's back, it was just fucking running right over, dude. There was a cannon mounted on the bow of the ship, which was used easily to just blast the Aztecs to the bottom of the lake. It was once again just like shooting fish in a barrel, but this time...
It was the Aztecs that were the fish.
Yes. In the end, the Aztecs would retreat from the water, leaving bodies and shattered canoes scattered throughout the lake. Cortés had effectively cut off all causeways and any kind of supply lines for the Aztecs. Tenochtitlan was left to fend for itself. With the Spanish and local allies in position, the squeeze of Tenochtitlan began.
Ooh, the squeeze!
The squeeze! He did leave one causeway open, a very small one, because he was hoping this whole time that the Aztecs would just surrender.
Right.
Because he wanted to keep Tenochtitlan. He did
Intact.
Not want to raise it. He did not want it to fall down and just come rubble.
Right.
His descriptions of Tenochtitlan when he first saw it is just like he fell in absolute love with it. Is the greatest thing he's ever seen in his entire life.
And then he was like, God, I'm going to destroy the fuck out of this
I'm going to
place."
fucking tear the shit out of this bitch. What took place through the next several weeks was a series of the same events repeating over and over again. And I want to put some perspective on how fierce this fighting was. Okay, the Aztecs had their backs against the wall, which will always bring out like a little bit more of ferociousness for someone. The Spanish knew that if they were to be captured or if they lost overall, the Aztecs would sacrifice them to their gods. The Aztecs and the Tlaxcalans were mortal enemies, and no quarter would be given between the two sides. To simply put it, this was the last fight for everyone's life, and the only result that could happen was the absolute destruction of one's enemy. It's
No
just
compromise. No
no
more.
fucking compromise here.
No mas. The combat that took place happened in an order like this. The Spanish and allies would advance up the causeways, and on each side of the causeway, there would be at least one brigantine ship to lend support and destroy any war canoes that attempted to attack the causeways. The Aztecs would try to set up barricades and traps, but the advanced weaponry from the Spanish would simply outmatch them.
Yeah.
The fighting was constant along the causeways for several weeks. The Spanish's biggest problem was the gaps in the causeways that the Aztecs had dismantled, so they would fill them with whatever they could. At night, the Spanish would retreat back to the mainland as it was next to impossible to make a safe camp during the night on the causeways, and the Spanish would get up in the mornings to see that the new barricades and traps were set up and the gaps were cleared. Then the whole process would start over again.
So tedious.
Yeah. As unproductive as all this sounds, it was actually working in Cortés's favor. The Aztecs were getting hungrier and hungrier, and they were working 24/7, fighting by day and working on the causeways at night. Also, they could not replace the fighters they lost since they were cut off from the mainland. So every man lost greatly affected the Aztecs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was pretty quick that Cortés shut down that one open causeway because he realized that instead of retreating, they're just using it for supplies during the middle of the night or something, like at times when it wasn't being secured.
Right.
And so he shut that bitch down.
He's like, all right, no
He's
more.
like, okay, so we'll completely suffocate you. Once the Spanish reached Tenochtitlan, the resistance grew from the Aztecs. The streets were narrow, ambushes were plentiful, and many Aztecs hung out on rooftops raining down arrows. This led the Spanish to burn down buildings, and the chaos ensued for several more weeks. On June 10th, 1521, the Spanish would begin coordinating an assault into the city and onto the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan. Cortés would reach the pyramid, but then once he was at the top, he realized that the Aztecs were actually rallying around Tenochtitlan and around the shores of the Great Lake, floating towards the city on their canoes. So it was a big push that happened into the city, and Cortés was just lighting shit on fire. He got to the top of the pyramid. He almost put a flag up because we know the Europeans are all about their flags.
Yeah.
And when he got up there, he was seeing like sympathizers. Yeah, fucking coming in from all angles, and he was just like, "Oh fuck!" So he ordered a retreat out of Tenochtitlan, fearing that he was about to be overwhelmed. Now, even though he did retreat, he still managed to land a symbolic blow to the Aztecs, thereby gaining an additional 50,000 local warriors from villages waiting to see who would win, like which side was going to do well.
The swing voters, so to speak.
Yeah. It was Argentina in World War II, you know?
Yeah.
They were just hanging back. Well, who's going to win? Who's going to win? Okay, yeah, of course we were with the Allies, you know? Meanwhile, they're hoarding fucking Germans the whole time.
The war continued with the repetitive war tactics to get back into the city, fill the causeway gaps, and retreat at night. But one night, Pedro de Alvarado and his men decided to stay the night on the causeway, which was a bad fucking idea.
This guy.
Dude, he just never seems to get it right, man.
There's always something.
And it's, for some reason, it's always this guy that Cortés is like, we'll give him another shot.
These guys always get that shot, dude.
Yeah.
They always get that other shot, dude.
And it always bites him in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
They were ambushed by several hundred Aztec canoes, several Spanish soldiers died, and 5 Spaniards were even captured. Alvarado made it back to the Spaniards' camps, where they were then able to watch their companions be sacrificed atop the Great Pyramid in Tenochtitlan.
Look at that. So, like, that's another thing. When they escaped on the Night of Sorrows on the causeways in the initial thing where they lost thousands of people, right? They were hanging back on the lakeside, and they could see and hear their men being sacrificed one by one at the top of the pyramid. This is Alvarado's like, fuck, why did we stay on the lake? And he's watching his men get sacrificed. Cortés was also not happy about this. And then
I would imagine not.
Yeah, super pissed off. But Alvarado managed to make up, like, do enough work of progress towards Tenochtitlan on that specific causeway that as soon as Cortés went over there to reprimand him, he saw the work that he had done, and he was just like, Alvarado, you're the fucking best, man. Thanks,
you're
dude.
The man.
Like, Jesus Christ.
I knew why I trusted you.
There was another drive made into the city after the gaps in the causeways had been filled with more permanent solutions. The Spanish wanted to go straight for Cuauhtémoc. Cuauhtémoc, sorry. The new emperor.
The new guy.
And see if cutting the head off the snake would damage the Aztecs enough to force them to surrender. They broke into 4 divisions. 2 divisions, including Cortés, were cut off by ambushes, and they suffered heavy losses, and about 100 of his men were captured by the Aztecs. The other 2 divisions were halted by the Aztecs, tossing them 5 recently severed heads of dead Spaniards, telling them that they had captured and killed Cortés and they would be next.
Wow.
All of the Spaniards and all the allies retreated, once again forced to watch and listen as the men who were captured be sacrificed atop the Great Pyramid. So the reason the other 2 just abandoned when they saw the heads, because they didn't know.
Right.
They don't have phones. They can't just call.
Yeah.
And so they didn't know. They're like, fuck, is Cortés like actually dead? Well, like, we have to retreat to find out and regroup, because otherwise we all are going to die.
Yeah.
And just be a sporadic ambush.
100%. So Cuauhtémoc sent out a message that night to the surrounding towns and villages about the recent Spanish defeat, and that he had also had a vision that all Spanish would be dead in 8 days. He asked for these towns and villages to rise up and unite against the Spanish invaders. There were also nice little gifts that accompanied these messages, like the heads of Spanish horses, human heads, and limbs of Spanish soldiers and native allies.
Check this out. I got a fucking horse out here.
Why the long face?
Come up, what's up?
So some who received these messages would try to rise up against the Spanish, but the rebellions were quickly extinguished. Cortés, hearing about this 8-day prophecy, decided to simply outwait the 8 days, and more doubt was cast upon Cuauhtémoc, bringing more native warriors to support the Spanish. Yeah, I was going to say, why did he only give him 8 days? Like, I feel like he shouldn't have put a time on it.
I think he was just getting so cocky you know, and he had to put something out that was going to be so absolute. You know, they always do that. These leaders at some point, they always have to say something that is so, like, decisive of an absolute victory.
I could end that war with a phone call.
Yeah.
Type shit.
One day, first day back in office, I could end this all. It would have never happened.
I'll build a time machine. I'll go back.
Finally, it seemed as if all the work the Spanish had been putting into cutting off supply lines was finally paying off. The causeways were suddenly left alone during the nights, and a few Aztecs that were trying to leave the city were captured, and they confessed that there was no more food or water. People were starving and dying.
Nice.
This was the signal Cortés had been waiting for. I mean, it's not nice.
It's just siege warfare. Well, I mean, it's nice for the Spanish. It's siege warfare, you know? It's like that's the boiling point in any siege is when they run out of shit.
It really is. Yeah, it's been happening.
Who runs out of shit first, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Now, this was the signal Cortés had been waiting for. It was time to allow Cuauhtémoc to surrender or begin his final push into the city. But Cuauhtémoc was too proud to surrender, and the Spanish invaders... who's too proud to surrender to the Spanish invaders, and so Cortés marched upon the city, burning every house and building to the ground in a systemic effort to rid the Aztecs of any place to hide. The Aztecs retreated to the market within the city, the large market, which is on like the northern end of the city.
Tlatelolco.
Tlatelolco, yeah.
Tlatelolco.
Yep, that's the only time we're going to say it.
Yep.
And so they converted this marketplace into a refugee camp and to their final stronghold as well.
The Spanish pushed their way into and through the city with ease, burning as they went, climbing the pyramids, tossing Aztec idols down the giant staircases, and raising the Spanish flag, of course. Any resistance
Finally got that flag up there, baby.
Goddamn right, dude.
It's like that.
That's the country's erection right there. Is
it's the moment in democracy. They're just standing there. They got their like homeboy playing on a violin.
Yeah. Exactly. Shout out Helldivers. Any resistance efforts made by the Aztecs as the Spanish made their way was easily thwarted. Women, children, and the elderly were seen trying to run and escape throughout the streets after the Spanish and their allies had captured about 90% of the city. But unfortunately for them, the Tlaxcalans released years of pent-up rage and slaughtered any Aztec they came across.
Dude, the Tlaxcalans had been so fucking scary.
Yeah, they're just brutes, man. Just brutish. Cortés would say of this situation, no race, however savage, has ever practiced such fierce or unnatural cruelty as the natives of these parts. Upwards of 50,000 people were either killed or enslaved during the fall of Tenochtitlan.
Just blood running through the streets, man.
It's a lot of motherfuckers.
Cortés would once again try to negotiate with Cuauhtémoc, wishing that he would surrender, but he had no luck. So Cortés laid siege onto the final stronghold of the Aztecs. On August 12th, 1521, after 75 days of fighting... 75. So many days. Cuauhtémoc, the chief of Tlacopan, and their families tried to make their escape in the middle of the night on some canoes, but they were stopped and captured by one of the brigantine ships. Cuauhtémoc would be brought before Cortés on August 13th, 1521, and using Malinche as a translator, Cuauhtémoc said, "I have already done everything within my power to defend my kingdom and free it from your hands. And since my fortune has been unfavorable, take my life, which would be very just. This will put an end to the Mexican kingdom since you have destroyed my city and killed my vassals."
Yeesh.
Damn. With the capture of Cuauhtémoc, Hernán Cortés had won. He had officially conquered the Aztec Empire. Although it wasn't how he had hoped, he truly did not wish to destroy Tenochtitlan, but all he had to show for his victory was dead bodies and a ruined city.
Well, he probably had a fuck ton of gold, though.
We're going to talk about that.
Oh, right, man. Did he know? Man. Oh, man. In the aftermath of the fall of Tenochtitlan and the Aztecs, the slaughter did not stop. The Spanish allies were hungry for revenge, and tens of thousands more were brutally killed or enslaved. Throughout the 75 days of fighting, over 200,000 Aztecs were killed. The Spanish lost between 300 to 500 men in these final days. Overall, the Spanish had lost between 1,000 and 2,000 men throughout the expedition. As for the Tlaxcalans, the numbers are difficult to find, but approximately 20 to 40,000 had died in the campaign against the Aztecs.
So many.
Yeah.
Died.
That is a lot of people.
And that's within, like, they've been there for about 3 years.
Yeah.
20 to 40,000 people have died.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody knew somebody who died.
Right. Now that Cortés had finally won his city, he wanted what every good old 16th century Spaniard wants. He wants his fucking gold.
Wants his gold!
Yes, over 8 tons of it. Well, the remaining Aztecs kind of just shrugged their shoulders when asked about it, and that answer was no good, so the Spanish began their torture.
Think about, like, the heart drop. When
Yep.
you're like, all right, where's the gold? And they're like, I don't know. You're just like,
Yep.
what do you mean?
Yep. Cuauhtémoc, right?
Cuauhtémoc.
God, I think I was so close. Cuauhtémoc was tortured until he confessed that the Aztecs had dumped the gold into the deepest part of the lake. A nice little spit in the face to the Spanish. Cortés simply couldn't comprehend that they would simply dump the treasure to the bottom of the lake, so they brought on a little more torture, soaking his feet in oil and lighting them on fire.
Yeah. It's sad. Yeah.
I guess he never has to worry about getting cold feet.
Wow. This man died.
Yeah.
Well, not
With that,
yet.
he didn't have to worry about much.
But the truth of the matter was, and still is, the gold was gone. No one truly knows where the gold went. Some say to the bottom of the lake. Some say spread throughout the mountains or even carried up to modern-day Utah.
Naturally. It's got to be that one.
There were little bits of gold found here and there, but the Spanish nor anyone after La Noche Triste would see that treasure again. The gold that Cortés and the Spanish so desperately cherished was gone like a dream. Montezuma's treasure remains one of the world's most renowned mysteries to this very day. That shit is gone.
So that lake is still there, though, right?
No.
No? Okay,
we'll
so
talk about that.
I was going to say,
So
did
they
they just
don't-
fill it in or what? We'll talk about it, I
Yeah,
guess.
we'll
Yeah,
get
we'll
there.
get
We'll
to
get there. But the gold, they just don't know because we'll talk about the lake has dried up, but it took hundreds of years for it to dry up. And at the same time, Mexico City was being built on top of it.
Oh, so the gold's under there, probably.
Or they actually did just disperse it and take it out because they're just like, we're going to give them no satisfaction whatsoever to obtain this gold. Quickest way would have been to fucking dump it in the lake, but they hadn't been isolated and cut off yet, so there was still time to export it out of the city.
Right. Now, Cortés didn't come up empty-handed in all of this. He still had made plenty. There were other treasures to be found throughout the city, and he was also receiving treasures as payment from his native allies. In the end, he would have plenty of gold, silver, and jewels, about 2,500 pounds of treasure to be exact. The Spanish fifth that was sent back later that year was 500 pounds, for those of you who can't do math.
Yep. It's a lot of gold and a lot of treasure.
It's a lot of treasure.
Making it easy. People are driving.
True. But the pesky French were able to snag that treasure on the return ship to Spain, and the gold ended up in the coffers of the French government.
It's the funniest shit ever.
I love it.
That
They're just like, nope.
Spaniards didn't even get their gold ever. So the first treasure ship that went back, like way back, the first time for a king,
When it stopped in Cuba.
it stopped in Cuba, yes, and then caused this whole shit. Honestly, if it wouldn't have stopped in Cuba, there's a chance that the fucking smallpox wouldn't have came over.
Ooh.
Because Alvarado wouldn't have found out, and he wouldn't have sent
What a butterfly
Alvarez,
effect.
right?
If you had one boat, one opportunity to spread smallpox.
But that treasure ship, it came to Spain, and the fucking harbor was just like, we don't know who the fuck you are. We don't know what's on this ship. And then so they made it dock, and then the crown refused to like see it for a while for some reason. And so the treasure just was there for like 2-3 months, and then it was just getting stolen.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, a lot of the treasure was just being taken off.
Duh.
Yeah.
I would've. What?
And then it ended up like getting sold somehow to like some art collector. I don't know, man. It was like none of this treasure went back to the rightful place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 2,000 pounds of remaining treasure was not all for Cortés. He did have debts. He kept a fifth for himself and then paid his captains and key personnel, key Spanish officials in the Americas and Spain, and the rather large debts he owed to people in Cuba and Hispaniola which left an extremely small portion for each of the remaining men in his army.
It was like 2 pesos each.
There you go.
Yeah, it was not good.
Man. It would have been a lot more if they hadn't have dumped all the gold in the lake.
You mean if Alvarado hadn't fucking massacred the Aztecs and pissed them all off?
Be mad at Alvarado, not Cortés. I mean,
Montezuma was ready to just let them take the gold and leave. Yeah. That was it. Like, you fucked that up, dude.
Yeah. Like, at that point, you just secure the gold and then come back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, secure the shit, then come back. There was almost a mutiny because of this, but Cortés gave land and commissions to make up for the lack in treasure. Other men were given rights to explore and exploit other lands in the region. They're like, well, you had so much fun the first time.
Go and check out this tribe.
Let's see what this other tribe is up to.
They have.
In come the Mayans. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if you think about it, this is where like old money comes from.
Yeah.
When these other explorers would go to other lands and exploit them for their natural resources, and then they would create mining companies and they would create other companies from that. That's the old money.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's crazy how
Why wouldn't one of our relatives have exploited the natives, damn it?
Because we were just fucking soldier farmer.
Yeah, we were just,
That's
we were
all
the grunts. We were the grunts.
Yeah, we didn't do a lot. We didn't do anything smart.
But now we started a podcast.
Yeah, so we're going to make so much money.
Really show our family what's what.
Man, Great-Grandpa Johnson would be like, what are you doing?
Like, what is it's called what?
Cortés now had a very large region to govern. He renamed Tenochtitlan Mexico City, might ring a bell, and would rid the region of any Aztec paganism and replace the temples with churches and cathedrals. Many of you might be wondering, if Tenochtitlan became Mexico City and there were 5 connected lakes surrounding the city, Ian,
what happened to the lakes?
Well, the Spaniards unfortunately did not understand the complex aqueduct system that they had destroyed in their siege when they were cutting off the water to the city, so that system was just left in disrepair.
Naturally.
They were just like, well, I don't know how to fix that shit. Whatever. Lake Texcoco took several centuries to fully dry up after the fall of the Aztec Empire. Following Cortés's conquest, the Spanish began efforts to drain the lake gradually as part of their urbanization and flood control projects for Mexico City, which was built on top of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. By the early to mid-1900s, most of Lake Texcoco had dried up. Although some small remnants of the lake still exist today, the process took roughly 400 years from the time of the conquest to the final large-scale drying of the lake.
Yeah.
So if you look at a picture of where the Great Temple is of Tenochtitlan, it is just smack dab. Like, there's a street that goes right in front of it type of thing.
Right.
Like, there is nowhere to dig anymore.
Yeah.
And 400 years of being underwater, too, and all that movement from land and them trying to drain and all that shit, it's down there. If they did dump it in that lake, it is gone.
Yeah.
They're not going to dig up.
No, they're not going to go that far to find what's
going to end up in a museum.
Yeah, it's just going to end up in a museum. No one's going to actually get the gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Spain will.
Yeah, Spain's like, hey, that's ours.
Actually, that shit's ours.
Cortés continued to gather surrounding regions and put them under his control. The Spanish crown was beginning to worry about how much power he was gaining, so they sent a new guy to replace Cortés. But he was simply put on a ship and sent away with some slick political maneuvers by Cortés.
There's a lot of these books go into great
like,
detail
there's
about
a
this
loophole
shit.
here.
And I'm like,
You didn't dot your I.
political maneuvers. That's all he did, and that guy went home.
Yep. Yep. Cortés was eventually legitimized by the Spanish crown. All of his bribes and political maneuvering had finally paid off for him. He and La Malinche,
she's the translator.
Yeah, and La Malinche.
Come on.
Don't come on me. He and La Malinche would have a son together, Martín Cortés. It can be said that Malinche and Cortés gave birth to the first mestizo, the first mixed-blood Mexican-European child.
Yeah.
Cortés later gave Malinche permission to marry a Spanish soldier. She would have a daughter, and then she essentially fades away from history altogether.
Yeah, she just kind of goes away from the history books at that point. Settles into a nice little quiet life. And one thing about Malinche that I don't I can't remember if we covered it in the first episode, but she was sold by her parents into slavery, and then she was sold from like tribe to tribe, and then she was given to Cortés as a slave. Yeah. So she saw the sacrifices that the Aztecs did, because there's a lot of controversy of like some people hate Malinche, some people love her,
right?
And some people see her as a traitor to the Aztecs, but she was just a slave to the Aztecs.
100%.
And if she wasn't as beautiful as she was, I guarantee she would have been sacrificed.
Yeah.
And so she just saw people that she loved and cared for, and people that she understood the suffering more so than these fucking high and mighty Aztecs.
Right.
Being fucking stepped on and sacrificed left and right. And she was just, the whole time, she's just like, so against the Aztecs. She just had no problem flipping that switch and helping Cortés.
Right.
When it comes to the Tlaxcalans, they would have many social privileges during this colonization era. They would be able to ride horses, carry firearms, and hold noble titles. They could also rule their own settlements without a bunch of Spanish interference. This relationship would last through the 1500s, but in the early 1600s, their land became taxed and occupied just like other indigenous peoples. I don't think they ever became enslaved, though. They were just... Yeah. The conquest of Mexico had secured Spain the most additional land ever won by a single person. Although wildly successful, the Spanish crown would set up a few legalities to curb Cortés's power, which irritated him for the rest of his life. Cortés was hugely influential in the religious conversion of Mexico when he invited the Franciscans, I think it is. Franciscans to aid in the conversion to Catholicism. To this day, the Catholic Church is insanely influential in Latin America due to Cortés.
That sounds right.
Yeah, they are. They're very much on the Catholic life.
Yes, they are.
And this is one of the craziest things. There has never been an instance where there like a race's, an entire society's, an entire religion has gone away, been completely washed from the face of the earth as fast as the Aztec religion.
Yeah, he kind of sped that shit up a little bit.
They came in, it was under a year. They came in there and they got rid of every idol. They got rid of every temple. They washed every single thing. They fucking shut down every kind of sacrifice, and they brought in Catholicism. They brought in Mary.
They brought in Jesus, baby. Cortés didn't exactly get to sit back and relax for the rest of his days. With great power comes great pains in the ass. He would spend most of his time tied up in conflict with the Spanish crowns or his enemies over wealth, land disputes, power, etc. Many people actually resented Cortés for how he came to power, and there was always a constant fear that he would make himself king of these new lands. He eventually found a new viceroy to manage his constant conflicts, and Cortés would continue his exploration and military affairs, becoming the first European to lay eyes on the Baja California Peninsula.
Yeah, shout out Baja California.
California love.
In 1541, despite all the success, Cortés found himself in debt after spending his money lavishly in his explorations. And not profited from them as much as he had really hoped for. He's like, I'll get another treasure trove. Don't worry. Nope. Tenochtitlan was that. Now, he didn't go broke. He was just in debt to these bitches. Like,
right.
And he just didn't, I think he just stopped paying them off because he returns to Spain later that year to escape lawsuits and creditors. And when he returned to Spain, he was given a hero's welcome, but he struggled to maintain his standing with the Spanish court. So, because he spent years petitioning King Charles V for recognition, repayment for these extra expeditions that he'd been going on, because he's like, I am in debt. You promised to fucking pay for this shit.
Right.
And additional honors for his conquests and services to the crown. Now, like, he couldn't even, at this point, he couldn't even grant himself an audience with the king. So he literally one day forces himself up to the king, and Charles looks at him and he goes, who are you?
Ooh.
Cortés replies, I am the one who brought you more kingdoms than towns before.
Yeah.
Which is such a powerful statement. Which is like, all right, that's a badass move.
Like, oh, so you're Cortés. All right, what's up?
What's up, dog? Okay,
right.
yeah, I owe you a few
My bad.
pennies.
My bad.
While in Europe, Cortés would take part in an expedition against the Ottoman Empire in 1541, which was a complete failure that lost about 17,000 men, and Cortés almost drowned after a storm took 150 ships in the sea.
Oof.
which is just
That's
like,
a lot of
God
ships.
damn, dude.
150 motherfucking ships.
That's so crazy. Like expeditions like this shit would just happen.
Right.
all
It's
the
like,
time.
oh, well, hopefully it's good weather.
Right?
Cortés hung around Europe for the next few years and decided to leave for Mexico. But before he could leave, he fell ill with dysentery and died on December 2nd.
Dysentery.
I always say that. I always do that. Every single time it's dysentery, I always say dysentery. He fell ill with dysentery.
Good job.
And died on December 2nd of 1547 at the age of either 61 or 62. He had asked to be buried in Mexico, and his body would be transported there in 1556. It's his bones. His bones were transported there. His body would move around quite a bit through the next few hundred years, and in 1823, it went into hiding after the independence of Mexico, fearing that the body would be desecrated as Cortés represented so many things people hated about the colonial past. Cortés's body would be rediscovered in 1946 when a secret file discussing the movements of the body was made public. The body was entombed in a wall in a church next to the altar in Mexico City, and his body remains there to this day. That's kind of crazy.
It is, but the church is also just like, it's just like having an uncomfortable guest here.
Yeah.
Because they're not, like, Mexico is not a big, like modern Mexico, they're not a big Cortés fan.
No.
Ever since the revolution.
There would be many
You're doing great.
There would be many exploratory attempts to recreate Cortés's success. The only one that was almost as successful was the conquest and conquering of the Inca Empire in the late 1530s, but nothing would ever match what Cortés had done in Tenochtitlan.
Hernán Cortés left behind a considerable legacy. He remains one of the most controversial figures in history. People suggest that if Cortés had not conquered Mexico, someone else would have, and that's probably true. But that argument really misses the point. Cortés did conquer Mexico. Others tried, and they failed. Most barely even made it out of their ships. There were, of course, some huge factors that aided Cortés in this conquest. The thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors, barriers, cooks, and workers. If smallpox had not ravaged the region, maybe the Aztecs could have held on for a little longer. But in the end, it was Cortés. It was Cortés who scuttled his fleet, leaving him and his men only one option: to push forward through the mountains to meet the great Emperor Montezuma. It was Cortés who manipulated information, promises, and politics with the natives to seek alliances that were necessary to complete his march to Tenochtitlan. It was Cortés who imprisoned Montezuma and realized the city could only be taken with a navy. It was Cortés who thought of the brigantines. It was Cortés who learned how to delegate power and authority over his hand-selected captains.
Especially Alvarado.
It was Cortés who faced the greatest of all odds and became a supreme commander, pitting the natives into a civil war. For nearly 3 years, he acted independently. He was a rogue, a rebel, a pirate. He was manipulative, duplicitous, and egomaniacal. He was barbarous in his own ways, using religion to justify torture, branding, execution, unprovoked massacre, and slavery. But his military, tactical, and political genius remains unquestionable.
True.
That is Cortés.
Wow.
And the fall of the Aztec Empire. Oh, man. That was so much. It was
a lot, but it was
such a good story, though.
It was necessary.
When I started doing this like months ago, and I was like, okay, we're just going to like hop back into it. I'm going to just do the, Cortés, the Aztecs. That'd be cool, right? That'd be cool. But then, like, you're thinking of literally, like, I'm reading all this, and I'm like, this is literally the fall of a civilization.
Yeah.
Because of one man.
Yeah.
That is an insane story. That is just, the odds are fucking never in his favor.
Yeah.
And then he somehow, time after again, fucking somehow finds a way to prevail.
There was a lot of luck involved, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Lots of luck involved, but
it's still
too
happened.
much luck for it to, you know what I mean? Like, there was so much luck involved that it was like almost there was no luck involved because he just thought of everything.
Yeah.
And every time something bad happened, he would learn and overcome, adapt, so he'd figure it out.
He's like the real life when somebody says, you gotta fail to succeed,
Yeah.
or learn from your mistakes, he's the motherfucker that learned from his mistakes.
Just think of Hernán Cortés.
Hernán Cortés.
And maybe don't think of him because he was not a nice
He's
man.
not the nicest guy. No. Nor am I. I'm not like fucking. I'm not in love with this dude. I'm fascinated by him.
Yeah.
I am absolutely fascinated by him and the challenges that he overcame. Because it's insane. It's absolutely crazy. He's a man that would look at today and probably spit at every human.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be like, these two motherfuckers are sitting where doing a what on a podcast? What's a podcast?
He'd also probably look at Putin and be like, it's taken you 2 years to get this far? Like, you haven't done shit.
You haven't done nothing. You haven't done nothing, Putin.
All right. Well, Ian, you got anything for the kids?
If you made it this far, you're fucking awesome, man.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back. Stay beautiful, bitches, because we fucking love you.
We fucking love you.